The views expressed on the following broadcasts do not necessarily reflect those of KHLT, Take 12 Radio, or our affiliates. The opinions on this show should not be considered as medical, psychological, or professional advice and are those of the host, co-host, and guest. Take 12 Radio and KHLT Recovery Broadcasting are not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship.
One day at a time with its failures and fears, with portion of pain and burden of care, we must meet.
Welcome to Walking Through the Language of the Heart, a journey into the grapevine writings of Alcoholics Anonymous co-founder Bill W. And now, here are your co-hosts, Chris S. and the Monty'man.
Well, come on in, kick your shoes off, put your feet up, and get ready for another episode. This is episode 80, Chris.
Wow.
Episode 80 of Walking Through the Language of the Heart. Folks, if you've never tuned into this, we are looking at Bill W.'s grapevine writings from 1944 to 1970 with our good friend and Take 12 Recovery Radio contributor, Chris S. Hey, bud.
Hey, what's happening, Monty?
So last week we weren't with you guys. We were at a AA convention down in Brookings, Oregon. Absolutely gorgeous part of the country. Went to the Redwood of the Redwood, and Trees of Mystery and all. It's a beautiful coastline. Just looking at all the wonder that God created. Thanking God that I am sober, because I would have missed all that stuff. Yeah.
That is really special country out there.
It really is. It's amazing. You went way up north, up in Washington, and spoke, and you said it was gorgeous up there as well.
I couldn't believe, I didn't expect the beaches to be half a mile wide.
Oh, yeah.
That really was surprising to me. Right. And people driving on them.
I know.
That was really surprising. But yeah, it was beautiful up there.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
So what do we got going this week, my friend?
All right. Well, episode 80. We're in part 3 of The Language of the Heart. We are on page 300. And the article that we're going to be talking about tonight, Monty, was written in May of 1960. And it's called What is Freedom in AA?
Interesting.
So that could be all kinds of different topics,
sure.
Right?
Yep.
A new freedom and a new happiness. It could be, the freedom of a group's autonomy. I mean, he could be talking about anything in here. So I'm interested to hear what he has to say. So let's go ahead and get started. The traditions and customs of Alcoholics Anonymous reveal a charter for individual and group freedom, the like of which history has never before produced. We have no humanly administered government whatsoever. Once upon a time, there was an AA member who got the notion that his own group was a little too stuffy, respectable, and intolerant. Hence it was, he thought, over fearful of the lapses and deviations of its members. Tongue-in-cheek, he pondered a remedy. Finally, he hung a placard in the club room. It read as follows: "Folks, just about everything goes in here. But if you happen to be drunk at this meeting, don't be too noisy about it. And please don't smoke your opium in the club elevators." So I can't believe Bill is putting this in 1960.
Wow.
So I know you've seen a lot in some of these rooms that he's talking about, Monty, right?
Yeah, you bet.
I mean, I've seen fist fights. I've seen hostile root canal-esque group conscience meetings and business meetings. There was a period of time where the room, nearly erupted into a riot when smoking was being outlawed
Oh
in the
my
meetings. Do
gosh.
you remember that?
Oh, I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. What a great night that was.
Yeah, and alcoholics can be so self-involved. It's
Oh
it's like
gosh.
the churches are asking us not to smoke anymore because that's what their insurance companies are telling them is going to
Yeah.
be necessary, and we're fighting about whether we're going to continue to smoke or not. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I gotta tell this really quick, just quick. So there was a guy. They called him Freeway, and I won't give even his first name, but let's say Freeway John. It wasn't John, but anyway. So Freeway, he was this guy that hitchhiked from the East Coast to the West Coast and back on a regular basis, right? And he sometimes he was sober, sometimes he wasn't. He was. His skin and everything was, just road torn. I mean, alcohol had really done a number on this guy. And he jumped into his sponsor's car during the smoke break. His sponsor happened not to smoke, so he's still in the meeting hall, jumped in his car and stole it. Somehow he borrowed the key from him to get his code or something, stole the car, and we saw it happening. And the entire meeting all jumped in their cars, and we were on a chase down Highway 5, almost all the way to Eugene, Oregon, before the Oregon State Police caught up with him. And here you had probably 14 different AA people driving, all pulling over the side of the road with their emergency hazard light flashing, going after Freeway.
That's hysterical.
And a couple of months later, the same guy went up to his sponsor, grabbed his cane out of his hand, and started beating him over the head with it.
That's not good.
No.
There's a tradition against that, I'm sure.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. So Freeway is no longer with us. I believe he passed away here not too long ago. But yeah, crazy stuff like that does and can go on occasion.
Man, that's not good. So I was. You ever hear of Solvang, California?
Solvang?
Solvang, yeah. It's I would say it's about an hour and a half northeast of LA. And I'm speaking at a retreat up there. This is 20 years ago, Monty. I'm speaking at this retreat up there, and it's really the first time I've done anything with the Californians. And one of my sponsees brought me out there because it used to be his home group, and the big home groups out there have retreats. And all the home group members come. It's
right.
the coolest. It's the coolest thing.
Yeah.
But I'm up at this retreat, and they basically brought this guy up to 12-step him, and he's a professional quarterback for one of the California football teams.
Wow.
All right, and he had a fall from grace. Let's just put it that way.
Sure.
And he's sitting there, and we're all fellowshipping and everything, and somebody turns around and goes, "Where's my car?" This guy had stolen it to get out of there. He wanted out, and he stole the guy's car who drove him there, I guess. And this is an ex-NFL quarterback.
Oh my gosh, what we won't
that did
do.
this, and everybody's like, "Well, should we call the police?" They really didn't even know what to do.
Right, right. Wait,
so
you can't kick him out of AA. Get him back here.
right. We don't want to hurt his feelings,
Right.
but it's just nuts.
Oh, that's funny.
So anyhow, it says, true, our friend had gone overboard to make out his case. An AA drunk at an AA meeting is seldom seen and is probably that nobody has yet smoked opium in the clubhouse. Nevertheless, any of us can read between the lines of that placard and to good effect. Our prankster was really saying to each of the respectable and fearful, but for the grace of God, there go I. To disturbers of the group peace, he was saying, nobody can compel you to behave or punish you if you do not. AA has 12 steps for recovery and for spiritual growth. It has 12 traditions for the unity of every AA group and our fellowship. These traditions show how we can all stay in one piece if we will. Now, this meeting place costs some money. We hope you will put some cash in the hat, but don't want to make you do it. You can attack us, but you'll probably find that most of us won't fight back. You can bust your anonymity in public and misuse the AA name for your own prestige and pocketbook. If you insist on such foolishness, we can't stop you. The same is true if you drag the AA name into public controversy. We hope you won't do any of these things to us or yourself. We simply say that you will have to practice AA's principles because you want them for yourself, not because we insist. The choices are yours. That is your charter of freedom in AA.
Wow.
Now he'll probably say this, Monty, but these are best practices. The 12 traditions, right? They really are. They've found that when they're when we operate under those traditions, the group has a much better chance for survival than if we don't, or if we have a bunch of members that completely disregard the traditions.
Right.
So Alcoholics Anonymous does not have a punitive mechanism. There's no tradition police. There's no one who is going to hold you account. Alcohol is the great persuader.
Right.
Alcohol is what's going to beat people into submission with these spiritual principles. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, so this one part that you read about, putting some money in the basket reminded me of this old guy, and he was old timer extraordinaire, right? And he would always say, "If you don't have $1 to put in the basket, you need to get the hell out of here." Yeah, you know what I mean. And nobody took him seriously, know. But as much as he was demanding that, we all tolerated him. You know what I mean? It was an exchange, and nobody was really. I mean, once in a while somebody'd say, "What's wrong with him?" He go, "Leave him alone."
Yeah, there's great characters. Like I was pranking somebody for about a year. This woman was it was her commitment to get up and start the meeting, and she would read the group preamble. It wasn't just what is. It's we had written a specific group preamble, and I took it upon myself to rewrite it every single week.
Oh wow!
Yeah, if you can imagine.
Oh,
and I remember one time I rewrote it this way, and and we're self-supporting through our own contributions. The basket will be going by, and if you're new to this group or this fellowship, the recommended contribution is $75. and like every week she was reading something like this. It was hysterical.
That's excellent.
It was hysterical.
Oh boy, you got my wheel spinning. Go ahead.
Finally, some group members came to me and said, "Chris, stop it, okay? Just stop it." You know what I mean? That's a little bit outrageous.
Oh, that's great.
For any other society, such unlimited freedom for the individual would be disastrous. Surely anarchy would take over in jig time. How is it, then, that we AAs can stand this amount of liberty, a liberty which sometimes looks like a license to do exactly as we please, individually and collectively? Then, too, is this unheard of charter of liberty made possible by our virtues, or is it actually powered by our necessities? Well, our necessities are certainly immense and compelling. Each of us must conform reasonably well to AA's steps and traditions, or else we shall go mad or die of alcoholism. That's an important warning point. Therefore, the compulsion among most of us to survive and to grow soon becomes far stronger than the temptation to drink or to misbehave. Literally, we must do or die. So we make the choice to live. This in turn means the choice of AA principles, practices, and attitudes that can salvage us from total disaster by ensuring our sobriety. This is our first great and critical choice. Admittedly, this is made under the fearful and immediate lash of John Barleycorn, the killer. Plainly enough, this first choice is far more a necessity than an act of virtue. Monty, I have firsthand experience with the power of these traditions, and I'm gonna tell you a brief story. So one of my sponsees had real serious problems with opiates. Okay, now he was in a specific fellowship where that's kind of an outside issue, right? So he came to me one time. He said, listen, I want to work with addicts. I want to I want to put a fellowship together with addicts. I'm going to start a blank blank meeting, and he went out and he did that. And what happened was he was using the big book because that's how he got sober. He was
Right.
using the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and he was in a different fellowship. And people came in and gave him a really hard time.
I'll
So
bet.
he had to like close the meeting down. And he went ahead and he started a fellowship. We all talked about it, and he started a fellowship. And the fellowship was called ANA, Alcoholics Narcotics Anonymous. That's how it started. This is around the year 2000. Okay. Now what happened is that same fellowship came in, and because narcotics was right next to Anonymous, they had a real hard time. So by then everybody knew what ANA was. It was nicknamed ANA, and meetings were starting up all over the place, right? So we wanted to keep the ANA, so we came up with another acronym. We came up with ANA RAA. And what that stood for was a National Association of Recovered Alcoholics and Addicts. That's what we called this fellowship. And Monty, it kind of died in America, but it's still in Iceland, it's still in Scandinavia, it's in Russia, it's in Canada.
Didn't I have somebody from that fellowship on the show
I'm
one
sure,
time? I
I'm
think
sure
you
you
turned
did
me,
like 10 years ago or
yeah,
something,
like 10
right?
years ago you turned me on to somebody. Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, that would have probably been Ray. Anyway, he started this fellowship, and the only thing they cared about, here's the point of my story. The only thing they cared about was taking people through the steps. If you came walking into this fellowship and people are sharing, and you raise your hand and you start sharing that you're pissed off at somebody or something, he would stop the meeting, he would throw a pencil at you, he'd hand you a piece of paper, and he said, we're doing inventory right now. If somebody talked about causing harm or whatever, he'd stop the meeting and he'd go, what's the person's phone number? You're making amends right now.
Wow.
And he would have the person call the person up and make the approach to make the amends. I mean, it was that serious about the 12 steps. Now, being that serious about the 12 steps, they couldn't have cared less about the traditions.
Sure.
They were doing whatever would work best to share their experience, strength, and hope with the steps, and that's all the focus was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And because of that, the fellowship only lasted in America between 5 and 7 years, and they're all gone now. And I know it's because the structure of the meeting and the traditions were just not important. They weren't a 3 legacy group. They
Yeah.
were a 1 legacy group.
Yeah.
And it was incredibly impactful for as long as it lasted. Many addicts who had never been able to get clean before were able to get clean using the big book and using this fellowship. It's just that their focus was solely on the 12 steps and not the things that make a group healthy, that make an organization healthy.
Do you think that and I know some folks that are very serious about the steps like you're talking about, that I rub shoulders with on a regular basis, that just really aren't sold on the traditions. And the statement that has been told to me, well, they didn't have the traditions when the success rate was way higher than it is now. And my answer to that is, yeah, but here's the other part. Alcoholics Anonymous wasn't as big as it is now, right? It isn't reaching as many people. Anytime you have a group or an organization and you've got any kind of foresight, you're going to want to plan ahead, right? You might not have bylaws today, but you're going to want to be talking about that, I think. And so I see, even though some of the traditions I think are kind of, maybe they could take a little sanding down a little, but I see the value in them. I really, really do, because I've applied them not only in recovery, but in my personal and family life as well. So don't you think that that's probably why early on it just wasn't as big, it wasn't as needed?
So why? Here's one of the reasons I believe why the success rate was so high in the early days. Like when you're reading the forward to the second edition, it'll tell you 50% of the people sobered up at once.
Yes.
Another 25% after a relapse or two. And so it was a 75% recovery rate of people who came into AA and really tried. That's what it says in the forward to the second edition. Now here's the difference between what I see today and what I see back then. For one reason or another, Alcoholics Anonymous as a service structure has as a priority tried to throw the net as wide as it can possibly be thrown. So all the pamphlets, all the Living Sober, the Plain Language Big Book, all of this is an effort to get to carry the message to as many people as they can possibly carry it to. Now, I'm not in agreement with that.
Right.
By the
me
way,
either.
I'm not, because you're getting people way before they're ready to come in and be good fellowship members.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? And you could be spoiling a later opportunity by getting somebody too early. In the early days, they went after low bottom alcoholics who really wanted to recover. And those are the people that they concentrated on. And those are the people that have a really good shot getting sober. When you cast the net, as wide as they've been doing for the last 40 or 50 years, you're not going to have really good numbers because you're just getting people that aren't appropriate for the fellowship showing up. You know what I mean? They're not going to do their job. They're going to use it as a social club or, whatever, which our traditions allow. Absolutely, our traditions allow it. But that contributes, I think, a lot to the.
That makes sense. And many of those people stick around long enough, and they become sponsors, and they start sponsoring people that may be real alcoholics. Yeah. But the way they're sponsoring them, they're killing them, Chris. You know what I mean? I hate to put it that bluntly, but I'm like, sometimes. So I heard last weekend, I heard this statement from this one speaker at this event I went to. She said, "My sponsor told me there's no wrong way to work the steps." And I was like, my fingernails dug into my wife's knee. When I heard that, I was like, ah!
A lot of that stuff is slowly disappearing with the advent of the big book movement. That's the insult people throw at the fellowship members who choose to pay attention to the basic text.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That'd be like going to the calculus classes and never opening the book and just sharing. Never solving any of the problems, never paying attention to the formulas, never learning calculus. But because the doors have been thrown that wide open, you're going to have that stuff, and you're going to have to put up with that stuff.
Sure.
You're gonna have to live with it. But as sponsors, though, our response, we have a responsibility. As a sponsor, I believe it's an adequate presentation of the 12 steps, and it's teaching somebody how to be a member in good standing. In these fellowships, how are you going to be a member in good standing? There's behavior that really is expected by good AA members.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'll just throw something out there. Lack of profanity would be one of them, wouldn't it?
You would think
if you're sponsoring somebody, you're going to not want them to use specific words when they're sharing. That's just a small example.
Yeah, there's okay. So the only requirement for membership is blank, blank, blank. But there is a requirement there is etiquette for meeting attendance. You don't walk into the meeting, without any clothes on. You don't walk into the meeting waving a gun around. You're probably going to be asked to come back tomorrow. And that's not booting somebody out of AA. That's just, there's just certain things you just don't do.
Alcohol is going to be the great persuader. A man I loved as much as a brother would come in 15 minutes late to the meeting, make coffee and kick chairs and be on his phone. I mean, just unbelievable disrespect. He'd share and then he would leave early. And it's like I can't believe you. What is it with you? And all I can tell you, Monty, is alcohol is a great persuader. He is dead now.
Wow.
Yeah, you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. And none of us killed him.
Right.
You know what killed him was alcohol.
Yeah.
And we've got to take this stuff really, really seriously.
Yeah.
Our life's dependent. It's etiquette that you would have in a lifeboat. Don't juggle hatchets if you're in a lifeboat. You know what I mean? Like, there's just certain things you just shouldn't do.
You have a way with words. I love it. Don't juggle hatchets or chainsaws.
Yeah. But once over this hump, we commence to make another kind of choice. We begin to see that AA principles are good ones. Though we are still beset with much rebellion, we increase the practice of these principles out of a sense of responsibility to ourselves, our families, and our groups. We begin to obey because we feel we ought to obey. Though painful, we see that this is the right thing to do. As we try for results, we see that we are growing. This is an earned satisfaction. Life still isn't easy, but it's a whole lot better. Besides, we have a lot of company. All around us, there are plenty of fellow travelers, individuals, or groups. We can do together what we can't do in separation. Finally, we see that there is still another dimension of choice which may now and then be attained. This is the point where we can take an attitude, engage in a practice, or obey a sound principle, because without reservation or rebellion, that is what we really want. When our willingness and acceptance becomes this complete, we find that all rebellion disappears. Now we conform because we fully want to conform. Or to put it another way, we want nothing else but God's will for us and His grace for our fellows. I have seen this progression in me, and I've seen it in so many other people. Like when I showed up, I was like overwhelmed with this toxic experience of self-consciousness.
Oh my gosh!
It was all about me. It was all about me, and what, who made this coffee? And I was sitting there last week. Why is somebody in my chair? And so and so's chair, and I just wish he'd shut up. I was like that guy, right? And today, truly, I'm really thinking, believe it or not, I'm really thinking, how can I make this meeting better?
Yeah.
How can I help this group to be more effective with carrying a message of recovery? And that's like a quantum shift.
Yeah.
And Bill is talking about that in these preceding paragraphs, how we grow up. You know what I mean?
There's so much in the big book that focuses on being of service to others, just being humane to one another, just not putting yourself at the head of the line. I mean, it's emphasized over and over and over again. And of course, what does it say about selfishness and self-centeredness? It was the root of our troubles, and yet sometimes I hear, no, the problem is the alcohol. And by people that have been around for years that are still very much like you just described. And I think that's why.
So the alcohol is like, if you fall out of a plane, the alcohol is the ground. But the problem is you fell out of the plane.
Right.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And I get that. I get why people think that.
Yeah.
But Bill is very, very precise about what he sees as our problem. He sees the condition of self as the thing that needs to be recovered from.
Yeah.
That condition of self is what the whole 12-step process is designed to help you recover from.
And I think that is the one thing that does unite all 12-step fellowships, hopefully. We may have a singleness of purpose in each fellowship, but hopefully there is that recognition that the selfishness and the self-centeredness and all, that is, and the God-shaped hole we're trying to fill with everything else,
Sure.
but God, we try to fill it with our own intellect, which is self again, is the same across the board, whether it's Celebrate Recovery, Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics for Christ, or whatever, right? I think fellowships that get that have successful members that go on to serve others and pass on the message, whatever their message may be.
I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. I'm not saying, I don't believe that alcoholics or addicts are the only people in the world that are selfish or
No, heavens
self-consumed.
no.
However, to overcome alcoholism or drug addiction, one must seriously be paying attention to the reduction of selfishness and self-centeredness, and that's really what the steps are about. You know what I mean?
Indeed.
So, looking back, we see that our freedom to choose badly was not, after all, a very real freedom. When we choose because we must, this was not a free choice either. But it got us started in the right direction. When we choose because we ought to, we were really doing better. This time we are earning some freedom, making ourselves ready for more. But when now and then we could gladly make right choices without rebellion, holdout, or conflict, then we had our first view of what perfect freedom under God's will could be like. Few indeed can long remain on that lofty plateau. For most of us, its permanent attainment has to be a lifetime and probably more an eternal job. But we know that this highest plateau is really there, a goal someday to be reached. Yeah, we claim spiritual progress, Monty.
Yeah.
I claim spiritual progress.
Amen.
I'm certainly not. I'm not going to say I'm perfect. I'm not even going to say I'm. I've come a long, long way. I can claim spiritual progress though.
But
And
it's
so can you.
it's progress.
Yeah.
Some
and
people,
so can you.
Some people will use that as an excuse. Well, it's progress, not perfection. Well, no, wait a minute. Whoa. It's spiritual progress, not spiritual perfection. And it's progress.
Yes.
You're going backwards, dude. It's not progress. You're making excuses.
Oh, man. Such are several freedoms in AA, and this is how they seem to work among us. To gain these insights took a long time. It was not until 1945, 10 years after I met Dr. Bob, that we even dared put the traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous on paper. There had been a period in which we continually feared what erratic members within the world without might do to us. It was difficult to believe that our group conscience could be a reliable guide. Hence, we questioned the wisdom of giving AA group its local autonomy. Still more, we questioned whether we shouldn't throw out undesirables and even unbelievers. To give every alcoholic in the world an exclusive right to say whether or not he would be an AA member was a breathtaking decision. Such were the fears of those days, and such were the restrictions that we were tempted to place upon each other. After all, these were the restrictions that even the more benign of societies and governments had to place on their members and citizens. Why should we be the exception? There's Bill Wilson understood us at such a level, Monty, that the whole 12-step process is a personal pathway to connection with the divine and going from self-consciousness to God consciousness. That's the whole point of the thing.
Yeah.
A cursory reading of the 12 steps would show you that, right? However, the traditions have made the fellowship welcoming to atheists, to whoever, and I understand that. You, we have to be there for people where they are,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
We have to meet them where they are. But if you look at all the old stories, you look at the stories that came out of the first edition, and you look at the work that these guys did, that that there was conformity. There was going to be conformity, or the person was not going to stay.
Yeah.
The person was going to drink. So there's this story about it's I can't even remember where it is, but it's about this guy who was causing a lot of trouble at the early meetings. What's all this God business? There is no God. What's all this God business? There is no God. And they were just waiting for this guy to drink. You know what I mean? And he ended up drinking, and he was gone for a period of time. And when he showed back up, at somebody's house, and they're all looking at him like, oh my goodness, this guy's back. And he goes, everybody ready to pray? I mean, and there's story after story after story like this in the book about conformity.
Yeah.
I think the net has been thrown so wide, though, that so many people who wouldn't really fit the description of alcoholism that's in this book are around, that can misbehave without, getting drunk, because they haven't lost that type of power.
Right.
And so,
Right.
so these traditions and how they were developed at a period of time where, listen, I still am all for them, but there's an attitude sometimes among people in Alcoholics Anonymous that is scary to me. You know what I mean? Like a complete nonconformity to the 12 steps, a complete denial that there's a God, or I should be practicing these steps. And I go to meetings and I'm just as good of an AA member as you are. Well, you would be like the person in the calculus class who's never read the book and never solved any of the problems, telling everybody you understand calculus just like the rest of the class. It's just not true. You've missed something huge. You know what I mean?
Tom Williams, the CEO for Came to Leave Recovery, said, he puts it this way. He goes, look, we didn't make this stuff up. We didn't write this. This is what they did. This is what, the we is about, was these first folks. And if you want to learn how to play football, you go to the football field with a football, not a baseball bat. Now if you show up with the baseball bat, you're probably not going to learn how to play football very well. So go ahead and learn how to play baseball someplace, but we're playing football and we're going to use a football. And we're not apologizing for it. That's what we're going to do. And if you're coming to the game with the baseball, you can call it Alcoholics Anonymous. You can call it a football game, but you're not playing football. You're not practicing the principles found in the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. You're just not. And when you talk that way, Chris, people really get upset with you. At least they do me. Yeah.
The thing is they talked about it in the old days, being an Alcoholics Anonymous member in good standing. What is that? What is good standing? Is an atheist AA member in good standing? I would question that. I hate to be controversial like this, Monty, but I would question that.
How could they be in good standing if the whole point is to help you develop a relationship with the Creator, and they don't believe in the Creator, and they're telling people it's okay not to? How can they say that's like being the president of the Snow Cone Club and saying, hey, look, snow cones, they really aren't very good.
they're cold.
They're cold. Yeah, they're cold. They hurt your teeth. Yeah, actually, you probably shouldn't buy one anyway. Next, what's snow cone? Oh, but it seems so clear to you and I. The only thing I can think of why it's not as clear as a bell to so many is because they've been blinded. Chris, I really believe, and I think that's where the spiritual battle comes in.
Yeah, and certain groups, I guess, are just absolutely fine with being as open as they can possibly be for any type of member to believe any kind of thing at all. I think it falls back on sponsorship. You know what I mean?
I think you're right.
I think every problem that is out there today can be solved with, good effective sponsorship.
Yeah.
Happily, however, we adopted no governmental measures. Instead, we cast up the 12 traditions of AA. These were truly the utterance of our entire group conscience. The amazing degree of today's voluntary conformity to them is something for the greatest wonder and thanksgiving. We now know that we shall always practice these principles, first because we must, then because we ought to, and finally because the majority of us will deeply want to do just that. There cannot be the slightest question of this. We trust that we already know what our several freedoms truly are, that no future generation of AAs will ever feel compelled to limit them. Our AA freedoms create the soil in which genuine love can grow, the love for each other, and for all for God Himself.
There it is.
So, yeah, that was an interesting article. Yeah. Freedom. So he's basically saying, freedom, but very, very soon conformity, or else disaster. So you know what I'm saying?
So I will close this out by saying this. I truly believe that freedom without responsibility isn't freedom. It's just self-centeredness. You got to be responsible. You got to be responsible. And when we're immature, we don't know how to be. That's fine, but we need guidance to learn how to do that. And I would just encourage folks, if you've had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, and you haven't stepped up to the plate and offered your hand of fellowship and sponsorship, please do it. And don't worry about, I'm not going to do it perfectly. I'm not qualified. You're qualified because you've had that spiritual awakening. That makes you qualified. In fact,
we need you. We need you.
In fact, it's more than makes you qualified. It makes you responsible, I think.
And we need you. We need experienced people.
We do. All right, next week, let's keep it simple. But how? Oh, that'll be interesting. All right. Chris, thank you so much. Listeners, listen to the end of this podcast for instructions on how you can catch up on all the episodes, all 79 plus this one, at take12radio.com. Until our next broadcast, this is the Monty'man along with Chris S. and the rest of the Take 12 Recovery Radio family, and we are wishing God's perfect serenity for you. For more recovery workshops with Chris S. and the Monty'man, visit our website at take12radio.com and click on the Recovery Workshops banner.
This has been a broadcast of Take 12 Recovery Radio and KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.
This has been a Chicken and a Pig production.
Kitty, 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 kitty. Meow, meow, meow.
Woof, woof.